Hello, readers by eyes and by ears. I hope you all enjoyed your day break. I definitely have enjoyed my time off. Anyway, I'm excited because we are officially moving on to the third volume of the Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish, also known as 残疾暴君的掌心鱼宠 by Xue Shan Fei Hu. And yeah, let's just see how things go. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. Chapter 77. The Fish Wants to Do It. Li Yu's days passed chaotically as he did his best to protect his secret fish identity. He had never spent such a long time traveling before, so whenever they passed a village, Prince Ting always stopped a few days at the local inn and took Li Yu to shop and eat a couple of hot meals. After Li Yu was rested, they would continue their journey. Because they were on the road, they carried a lot of travel rations with them. At first, Wang Gong was able to prepare a lot of side dishes and meat-filled pancakes, but they were gone within a few days. Li Yu quickly grew tired of the rations, but luckily for him, he could transform back into a fish. He had no problem eating fish food every day. Sometimes Prince Ting would take him out to eat meat too, and he'd order Wang Xi to purchase snacks for Li Yu in the villages they passed. Li Yu was being taken care of so well, he felt like traveling was barely a hardship. Once they were truly in the middle of nowhere, they camped out a few times. Li Yu gave up his comfortable carriage to sleep in the thick furs together with Prince Ting. The moment Li Yu got over his own mental block, he became absolutely shameless and even started begging for intimacy, insisting that being out in the wild had its own sort of charm. Unable to convince him otherwise, Prince Ting always ended up giving in. The two of them would hold each other, listening to the howling winds outside the tent as they felt each other's racing heartbeats. If only Li Gongzi didn't have to end each encounter by rushing back to the carriage, half-dressed and panicking. Several parts of their journey took them through the isolated wilderness. In his boredom, Li Yu discovered a new skill. When he tried hunting for wild vegetables on the mountainside, he found his success rate 100%. He'd even tried digging up sweet potatoes, a task he completed with equal perfection. Wang Xi returned empty-handed, but Li Yu's arms were piled so full he could barely hold all the vegetables. Wang Xi couldn't be more envious. When they passed by a river, Li Yu proved to be just as lucky at fishing. He just stood by the shore where the water wasn't too rapid and gently patted the rocks there, and shrimp, crabs, and loaches would come teeming out, occasionally joined by other fish. Li Yu didn't eat fish anymore, so he'd return all the fish to the water, but the shellfish could all be eaten with just a little boiling, retaining their natural flavor. Wang Xi was pleased and excited, but still insisted on boiling it for him, refusing to allow Li Yu to get involved. Li Yu was confused. He'd cooked back at the manor and Wang Xi never stopped him then, so why was he stopping him now? Quick-witted, Wang Gong suddenly had nothing to say. It was actually because he was afraid Li Gongzi's cooking skills would ruin all the food. But His Highness had ordered them not to comment on the Gongzi's cooking skills, so no matter how many times Li Yu asked, Wang Xi's mouth was shut tight and he never let anything slip. But it wasn't a big deal. Li Yu quickly pushed those thoughts to the back of his mind. To him, being able to find ingredients to cook with was more useful than being able to cook. He'd finally noticed that his luck was unbelievable when it came to finding food. This was when Li Yu finally understood the well-fed and well-clothed stat that he'd been given a buff on wasn't about his cooking skills. It was about his ability to find food. Perhaps in the future, it would affect his clothing too. Thinking back on it now, other than the time he'd purposefully starved himself, he'd never really gone hungry. Li Yu was torn between complaining that the fish scamming system picked such weird places to give him good luck and celebrating that he'd never starve as a koi. 2 months later, they finally arrived at a small village on the western border, Luofeng Village. It was the temporary home the emperor had hand-picked for Prince Ting. The village head had received the secret order a while ago and had a dwelling already prepared for Prince Ting. It was apparently the best manor in the village and had been cleaned from top to bottom. However, when Prince Ting took Li Yu to see it, although the village head had referred to it as a manor, it was just a 2-courtyard home. Compared to what they were used to, this was practically cramped. Of course, Li Yu usually stayed in his tank, so he didn't care much about the size of the house. Prince Ting rubbed the fish's heads silently. As far as he was concerned, anywhere smaller than his manor was a downgrade for Xiao Yu. Due to the distance, they also hadn't been able to bring the crystal fish tank along, so Prince Ting was forced to make do with a few of the smaller ones. He thought this was a downgrade too, even though Xiao Yu didn't care at all. Prince Ting had brought along plenty of guards, as well as a few servants, but they wouldn't all fit in the 2-courtyard dwelling. Thinking quickly, Wang Xi bought the properties on either side. Now there was enough space for everyone. Though the residence had been cleaned, it was a little outdated. Wang Xi wanted to renovate it slightly and expand the main courtyard, but Prince Ting shook his head. They were here on the emperor's orders. It would be best not to act outside those orders. As soon as Li Yu arrived at his new house, he took a look around, strolling along until he spotted his tank in Prince Ting's room. This room was a lot smaller than the one in the prince's manor, and all the furnishings were quite ordinary. There was barely even enough space to turn around. Li Yu had the feeling it would be a hassle to transform here. He was just about to protest when Prince Ting asked Wang Xi to prepare the room next door for Li Gongzi. "Is Li Gongzi not staying with your highness?" To Wang Xi, this was unbelievable. During the whole trip, his master had never ridden in the carriage, riding on horseback so that Li Gongzi could have the carriage to himself. Wasn't that enough? Now he was living apart from Li Gongzi? Was he that into the idea of Li Gongzi being pregnant? Prince Ting leveled Wang Xi with a look. It was too small here. Li Gongzi wouldn't be able to sleep well. Originally, the room next door had been reserved for Prince Ting's study. Since Prince Ting was adamant, though, Wang Xi could hardly protest, so he quickly had it cleaned up for Li Yu. Li Yu was very embarrassed, but he felt he couldn't say anything either. It was his fault for keeping such an unspeakable secret. Because their new home was so small, Prince Ting laid down some new rules. There was no need for the servants who came with him to wait on him at night. The guards were still obliged to continue with their jobs as normal, but everyone else was only tasked with taking care of themselves. "Li Gongzi, I'm leaving His Highness to you." Wang Xi kept going over reminders with Li Yu. Prince Ting was sending Wang Gonggong away too, so he had to ask Li Yu to handle it in his stead. Li Yu agreed, blushing, but his heart was beating wildly. After Wang Xi and the others left, Li Yu poured some hot water into a clean copper basin, a little clumsily. After he thought it over, he added a bit of cold water to make it a mild temperature and brought it over to Prince Ting. "Your Highness, why don't you wash your hands and face first?" Li Yu didn't really know how to take care of other people, so he just followed his own habits. He'd already combed out his hair and taken out his hairpiece. His hair was now longer than ever, and he'd gathered it into a casual ponytail at the back of his head to stop it from falling into his eyes. Prince Ting loved seeing him in such a relaxed, domestic state. Grabbing Li Yu's hands, he put them into the warm water and rubbed his palms gently. Li Yu couldn't be any more familiar with water. He scooped some up and poured it over the back of Prince Ting's hand. The prince smiled, and the two of them played with the water for a while. Li Yu cursed inwardly as he realized he had lost track of time. He furtively glanced at the hourglass he'd brought from the manor, which kept track of the time he could spend as a human. Making a quick estimation, Li Yu figured he had more than enough time to take a bath. "Your Highness, do you want to take a bath? I can help you wash your back," Li Yu blurted out. As soon as the words left his mouth, he felt like an idiot. Prince Ting had just cleaned his hands and face, and now he was talking about a bath? He was a fish, so he spent most of his time in the water, and he never got too dirty. But while they'd been on the road for 2 months, Prince Ting had only been able to take a bath when the inns they stayed in allowed for it. Li Yu was just worried Prince Ting was uncomfortable. Prince Ting understood his intentions and nodded, smiling. He didn't want to overwork Li Yu, though. So he walked to the bathtub himself. Wang Xi had prepared plenty of hot water. After seeing how awkwardly Li Yu poured water into the copper basin, there was no way Prince Ting was going to let him pick up the water jug again. Prince Ting tested the water temperature and poured the water himself. "Your Highness, I can help wash your back." Li Yu's eyes were bright as he draped a towel over his arm. Prince Ting took a secret glance at the hourglass. They seemed to still have enough time, so Prince Ting suddenly pulled Li Yu into the tub. "Your Highness, what are you doing?" Li Yu exclaimed in shock as he toppled headfirst into the water. Prince Ting smiled and pressed Li Yu into the side of the tub. His Highness didn't just want a back scrub. He wanted a full fish meal. Li Yu was completely red after the bath, and there was still a bit of something lurking in his eyes. Sitting on the chair, he kicked his feet aimlessly while Prince Ting helped him change into a snowy white silk top and dry his hair. Li Yu suddenly realized who was taking care of whom. Whatever. This fish wasn't fussed with the details. He shook off the towel and, smiling, stepped onto Prince Ting's feet, one foot after the other. He wasn't wearing socks or shoes, and his feet were still a little wet. Prince Ting went very still. Li Yu knew he was fanning the flames. They had been dating for nearly half a year, and their feelings were steadily growing deeper. He had followed Prince Ting from the manor all the way to this dilapidated dwelling, but everything still felt sweet. Did this mean they could push things a little bit further? He'd only laid down those rules in the beginning because he was afraid he'd turn into a fish in the middle, after all, not because he didn't want to. Actually, the transformation problem wasn't impossible to overcome. He had an accurate way to measure time now. He could totally split the bed activities into 2 halves. For example, he could transform on the night of the first day. When it was close to midnight and his time was almost up, he could find an excuse to go to the other room, such as going to the bathroom, and turn back into a fish. He just had to wait a moment until the next day and then transform again. In simpler terms, he just had to minimize the time between transitions, and night was the best time for such activities. Hard work always pays off. The fish had finally managed to come up with an ingenious plan, and he definitely wanted to try it. Over the last few months, Prince Ting had practically become a monk. Li Yu had tried to seduce him over and over, but Prince Ting followed the rules to a T, refusing to even enter the room. Li Yu suspected if this continued, he might become a monk as well. Seriously, why did he lay down those rules in the beginning? Now he was facing the consequences. Sob, sob, sob. He really wanted to do it. With Li Yu's legs shifting restlessly, Prince Ting was also uncomfortable. He took a step, wanting to find out the fish's intentions. Li Yu's feet were on Prince Ting's, and he was zoned out. Losing his balance, he was about to fall over when Prince Ting quickly caught him. Li Yu seized the opportunity. He fell onto Prince Ting and rubbed his eyes, pretending he could no longer keep them open. Prince Ting picked up the fidgeting fish and set him down lightly on the bed. Li Yu quickly clung onto him, not letting him go. Although they had taken a bath together, he knew Prince Ting was holding himself back and was currently in a bit of a state. Despite all the time they'd spent abiding by the rules, Li Yu still knew how to get his boyfriend worked up. Prince Ting was clearly affected. In unison, the two of them glanced at the hourglass out the corner of their eyes. Now that they were cuddling together, Li Yu thought he was about to succeed. Prince Ting let go of him as usual, but Li Yu didn't say goodbye. Instead, he hinted in a small voice, "Your Highness, wait for me." Prince Ting froze. Li Yu fluttered his lashes at him playfully and gave him a sultry glance, about to rush to the other room to prepare. At that moment, the unexpected happened. There was a yell from outside. "Your Highness, watch out!" Li Yu and Prince Ting heard the sounds of knives and swords outside. They glanced at each other. Who could have guessed assassins would appear in this tiny town thousands of miles away from the capital? Li Yu was not at all prepared. It was almost time for him to transform. For a moment, he was frozen in place, at a loss for what to do. Prince Sting, on the other hand, reacted much more quickly. He rushed forward, grabbing Li Yu, who was nearly out the door, and shoved him behind a wardrobe. He nodded at Li Yu. "Hide here. Don't move." Prince Sting waited until the noises grew louder, then rushed out with his sword drawn. The western border was rife with conflict, but this had been an empty dwelling. As soon as they arrived, so did the assassins. What a coincidence. Naturally, Prince Sting assumed they were here for him, but he still had to confront them. There were only so many rooms in this residence. If he didn't face them now, the assassins might make their way inside, and Xiao Yu would be in danger. If he went out to challenge them, at least Xiao Yu would be safe. He closed the door behind him and took a moment to calm himself. The guards were engaged in a brawl with a group of masked people in dark clothes. It was unclear who had the upper hand. One of the assassins broke away to head for him, but Prince Sting kicked them away and entered the fray. As expected, the assassins were in the midst of searching through the rooms, but as soon as Prince Sting showed up, they stopped their search, with more than half the assassins concentrating their attacks on Prince Sting. Inside, Li Yu paced around worriedly, listening to the sounds of shouting and fighting from outside. He couldn't bear to hide by himself, so he cracked the window open a bit to see Prince Sting battling alongside the guards. He suddenly felt much better. He scanned the scene just in case and happened to spot someone drawing a bow in the distance. His heart raced. He didn't know if Prince Sting would be able to avoid it. Beside himself with worry, he glanced around inside the room. His eyes brightened as they landed on a copper basin, but then he quickly glanced at the hourglass. He gritted his teeth. He still had a little bit of time. As long as he was decisive and moved quickly, it would work. Li Yu grabbed the copper basin, hiding behind it like a shield, then pushed open the door and ran out wildly. "Your Highness, watch out for the archer!" No sooner had the words left his mouth than an arrow sped toward Prince Sting. Li Yu screamed in alarm, but Prince Sting calmly tilted his head to the side and avoided it. Li Yu rushed forward and shielded Prince Sting with the copper basin. His fear only lasted a short second. The hand holding the copper basin was shaking, but very quickly steadied. He was a man too. He knew Prince Sting had rushed out in order to protect him, but he wasn't afraid of death. He wanted to protect Prince Sting. Meanwhile, Wang Xi arrived with even more guards, and others rushed over from nearby. The dark-clothed intruders were gradually surrounded. Seeing that the situation was not in their favor, they started to retreat. Prince Sting grabbed a bow from Wang Xi and, without taking the time to aim, shot down the archer from before. Very quickly, the archer was surrounded by the guards. With the dangers over, Li Yu clung tightly to Prince Sting. He used to be afraid of blood, but now that Prince Sting was covered in it, he didn't seem to care anymore. Not only did he not care, he straight up burst into laughter. Just now, a thought had flashed through his mind. What if Prince Sting had been shot by an arrow? He was afraid of the assassins, sure, but he was much more afraid of losing Prince Sting. He wanted them to live peacefully together. As Li Yu made this realization, there was an announcement from the system. Through thick and thin was now completed. Li Yu smiled smugly. He was just about to praise himself when his smile suddenly froze. Fuck! His time was up! Li Yu had no time to say anything to Prince Sting. He ran back to the room. The moment he pushed open the door, Li Yu heard the chilling sound of a bow being pulled back. "Gongzi, be careful!" Wang Xi yelled in a panic, but he was too far away to help. Li Yu's eyes widened. He didn't even have time to look back. Seeing that the arrow was about to reach Li Yu, Prince Sting threw himself at him, toppling both of them into the room. They fell to the ground, narrowly avoiding the arrow. Li Yu was held protectively in Prince Sting's arms, but the corner of his eye was a little damp. "Your Highness!" Li Yu choked up, but before he could voice any of his gratitude, he turned into a lively jumping fish before Prince Sting's very eyes. Ugh! Finally! Chapter 78. Bossy Fish Spirit. Li Yu's mind went blank. He had just transformed right in front of Prince Sting. How was he going to cover this up now? Slap Prince Sing into unconsciousness, then tell him it was all a dream? How absurd! Fish or human, his strength was no match for Prince Sing's. His cover hadn't just fallen off, it had shattered to pieces. He couldn't just put it back on. Struggling wildly inside his clothes, Li Yu almost forgot to jump back into the tank. What would happen now that Prince Sing knew Li Gongzi was a fish? He'd think Li Gongzi was a carp spirit, right? Li Yu had heard that in ancient times, people burned Yao. He didn't want to become a grilled fish. Preoccupied with his internal screaming, Li Yu completely forgot there was a third person here. The assassin who'd shot at him had escaped into the room because he was injured, and he'd just witnessed a human transforming into a fish. He was so shocked he couldn't even speak. Prince Sing quickly got up, kicking the door closed. He had to keep Wangxi and the others outside before they could rush over. Then he approached the assassin menacingly and knocked him out. With the assassin taken care of, Prince Sing glanced back at the carp spirit. Xiao Yu was still struggling, lost, as though his mind had gone completely blank. Prince Sing sighed inwardly. He'd done his best. Now that the situation had come to this, he didn't know how to deal with it either. His most pressing concern was that the fish lacked water, so he immediately put him into the tank. He'd find out what the carp spirit's intentions were before making any other moves. Li Yu's brain was completely mush at this point. Watching Prince Sing rush here and there, he didn't know what to do with himself. It wasn't until Prince Sing stopped in front of him that the fish snapped out of it. Was Prince Sing going to capture him? Li Yu was too afraid to move. It wasn't a big room. Now that he'd been spotted, there was nowhere he could hide. Besides, he couldn't go without water for long. Even if he managed to escape, the only place he could run to was the fish tank. What was he supposed to do? He was about to become a dead fish. Li Yu's body went stiff, allowing Prince Sing to pick him up. Li Yu resisted the urge to take a swipe with his tail. Even now, he couldn't bear to slap his boyfriend in the face. Sob. No, his boyfriend was definitely about to dump him. Now that Prince Sing knew he was a fish, it was hard to say whether he'd even want to keep him anymore. Yesterday, he was his beloved pet fish. Today, he might just saute him. The more Li Yu thought about it, the less confidence he had. Prince Sing held him in his hands, but Li Yu didn't wrap his tail around his finger like normal. Instead, his tail was straight and stiff. He'd have to lay flat later anyway, when it was time to get skewered for barbecue. Li Yu's thoughts dissolved into shock as Prince Sing put him in a crystal bottle. Wait, didn't Prince Sing want to kill him? After Prince Sing dropped him into the water, Li Yu observed quietly. Prince Sing was looking at him intently. It didn't seem like he wanted to arrest him. Li Yu swam a careful lap, and Prince Sing didn't have any other reaction. Your Highness, how are you and Li Gongzi doing? Are you hurt? Wangxi yelled loudly from outside. There was still an assassin inside, and Li Gongzi might even be injured, but his master had closed the door. Why? At the moment, Li Yu was very sensitive to sound. Wangxi banging on the door gave him a fright, and he sank to the bottom of the bottle. Was it too late to pretend to be dead? Prince Sing glanced helplessly at the fish's attempt to play dead. He couldn't speak, so it was hard to communicate. He thought about it for a moment, then reached into the water with a finger and patted Xiao Yu's head comfortingly, confusing the fish even more. If Wangxi didn't get an answer soon, he was going to knock the door down. Prince Sing grabbed the unconscious assassin, walked out, and then immediately closed the door behind him, not letting anyone see inside. As soon as he left the room, Prince Sing's handsome face darkened. He took care of the assassin with a single stab of his sword and threw him onto the floor. Thanks to Xiao Yu's fear of seeing him kill someone, this assassin, who had dared to harm his beloved, had been allowed to live a few moments longer. But Xiao Yu's identity had to remain a secret. Wangxi quickly ordered someone to move the corpse. Your Highness, what about Li Gongzi? Prince Sing glanced back at the room. Wangxi immediately understood. As long as he's all right, Your Highness, do you need to summon a physician? The attack had been so chaotic, Wang Xi was afraid his master or Li Gongzi was hurt. Prince Ting wanted to refuse, thinking about how scared Xiao Yu was, but after a moment's consideration, he gestured with his hands. Wang Xi nodded. This old servant understands. We'll leave Li Gongzi to rest for a few days. I'll call for a physician another time. Li Yu was listening just from the other side of the wall. Every time Wang Xi mentioned him, he trembled with anxiety. He couldn't see what was happening, and he didn't know how Prince Ting would explain things to Wang Xi, so he could only guess from Wang Xi's responses. He listened for a while, but it didn't seem like Wang Xi knew he was a fish. Did Prince Ting not tell him? He'd seen him transform, so why didn't he tell Wang Xi? Even if it was unbelievable that a human could turn into a fish, Wang Xi, of all people, would believe Prince Ting, so why didn't he? Li Yu's scrambled brain finally started to catch up with what had happened. Prince Ting's expression when he left, as well as the gentle way he touched his head, it really didn't seem like he was angry. Li Yu couldn't help the pitiful hope blooming at the bottom of his heart. Was it really possible that even though he'd discovered his secret, Prince Ting wasn't angry and was instead helping him cover up? How else could he explain the prince refusing to let Wang Xi into the room and carefully putting him into the crystal bottle? Didn't His Highness think he was a monster? While Li Yu floated in his tank, feeling uneasy, Prince Ting took care of all the things that needed his attention right away. First, he had to make sure no one else had noticed anything when Li Yu transformed back into a fish. Luckily, he had thrown himself on top of Li Yu, and other than the assassin who had already been taken care of, no one else had been close enough to see anything. There were no high-ranking officials in Luofeng village. Now that Prince Ting was here, he was naturally the highest authority. There was no need to take the assassins anywhere else. They were handed over to the guards for questioning. The reinforcements Wang Xi had brought consisted of 2 squads of Imperial Guards. The captain came over to bow to Prince Ting in greeting and said he was under the Emperor's orders to protect him. Rubbing his brow, Prince Ting ordered Wang Xi to first thank them on his behalf and then to begin a draft of a message he was going to send to the Emperor. Now that Prince Ting had decided to fight for the throne, he had to let the Emperor know when anything serious took place. Prince Ting picked the most important things to relay. After taking care of all these tasks at top speed, he went to look for Xiao Yu. Before entering the room, he once again signaled to the servants that they should not enter. Then he stepped quietly over the threshold and went to look for the fish in the tank. The difference was obvious as soon as he entered the room. Xiao Yu no longer seemed dejected and swam to him willingly, his tail wagging eagerly. The carp spirit had thought it through. The corner of Prince Ting's lip quirked up as he affectionately patted the fish's back, but Li Yu responded by diving behind an underwater plant and peeking out at him. Prince Ting knew Xiao Yu was testing him because he was afraid, so he didn't make a big deal out of it. He took out the note he had just prepared and spread it out to where the fish could see. Li Yu saw what was written on the paper clearly. Don't be afraid. Oh. Prince Ting had written many notes to the fish. He'd gotten hurt for him, and just now he'd saved him. Li Yu suddenly felt a little teary-eyed. Sorry, Your Highness. Perhaps I should have told you. The fish and human faced each other. Earlier, in his quest to get intimate, Li Yu had delayed his transformation until the night. Now that it was past midnight, Li Yu knew he could transform back into a human. In the end, the plan he'd put so much thought into was going to be used to come clean. Before, afraid that Prince Ting would hate him, Li Yu would never have dared to transform rashly. Now, he let it all go. That note had given him endless courage. Without hiding anything, Li Yu poked his transformation scale, and right before Prince Ting's eyes, he turned into a human again. Wrapping himself messily in his clothes, he said, Your Highness, I have something to tell you. About me. About why I can turn into a fish. How was he supposed to explain? Belatedly, Li Yu realized he didn't know how to start. Was he supposed to tell Prince Ting that he was originally human and for some reason had transmigrated into a fish with a system, and Prince Ting was a character in a novel he'd read? Even if Prince Ting could accept his transformation, There's no way he could accept that he was a character in a book. After all, it would change his entire worldview. What if he told the truth? But Prince Sting thought he was talking nonsense. It was best to not mention the system or his transmigration. But if he didn't, how was he going to explain this? Li Yu had never expected his identity to be exposed so suddenly, and he definitely hadn't expected that explaining afterward would be so hard. He had to come up with a reason that would be acceptable to Prince Sing. Aha! As he desperately searched for an explanation, a light bulb went off in Li Yu's head. Prince Sting had personally witnessed him turn into a fish, so he definitely must have presumed he was a Yao. But Prince Sting had chosen to protect him regardless. That meant that there was still room in Prince Sting's heart for Li Gongzi, even if he was a Yao. Prince Sting had read all those novels about cultivation and Yao recently. That was probably why he could accept that Li Yu was a Yao so fast. That, and the fact that he wanted to protect Li Yu. Prince Sting wasn't a man who lost his cool easily. If he was the sort to be panicked and at a loss the way Li Yu had been when his identity was exposed, Wang Xi and the others would have found out on the spot. As Li Yu came to this realization, he wanted to weep. How could this man be so good? He always knew how good Prince Sing was to him, but somehow, every time, he found a way to treat him even better. Since Prince Sing could accept that he was a carp spirit, he might as well stop trying to look for an excuse. He'd just pretend to be a carp spirit. What was the difference between a fish with a system and a cultivating fish? They could both go back and forth between human and fish. It was basically the same thing, right? If he was a carp spirit, then couldn't the system be categorized as the immortal guiding him and the tasks as a kind of cultivation? It all matched up. Then why did he transmigrate? It was to endure a tribulation? He could only transform for 2 hours a day because he didn't cultivate enough? Li Yu suddenly felt much better. He almost started waving his arms around in his excitement, but Prince Sting patted his arm, encouraging him to calm down. Li Yu thought everything through in his head hastily before finally stammering, Your Highness, I want to tell you, I'm actually a carp spirit. Prince Sting nodded cooperatively. He'd known for a long time. Li Yu spun a fantastical tale. Once he was done, he looked at Prince Sting worriedly, afraid that Prince Sting would spot his lies, or that he would suddenly go back on his decision and decide it was off-putting that he was a fish. Fortunately, Prince Sting didn't show a hint of disgust. He even spread his arms in response after Li Yu's tale. This meant he was willing to accept him, to support him, and to continue being his boyfriend. Li Yu's nose prickled with emotion. Not even he believed his own shoddy explanation, but this person chose to believe him. He choked on a sob. Your Highness, I would never harm you. Let's continue just like before, okay? Prince Sting nodded. Their situation had never changed. Li Yu approached him slowly, leaning carefully and gradually into him. Occasionally, he'd glance up at Prince Sting's expression, but he could see that he really didn't mind. Li Yu was eventually completely relieved. He couldn't believe he'd managed to safely make it through exposing his identity. He let out a few muffled shouts, unwilling to let go of Prince Sing's arm. When he remembered to check, the hourglass was once again almost empty. He couldn't continue with his original plan to finally consummate the relationship, but Li Yu still didn't want to leave. He had a boyfriend who didn't care that he was a Yao. Your Highness, I'm a little sleepy. Let me sleep for a while. The bossy cop spirit found a warm, comfortable position in Prince Sting's arms and fell asleep, at peace. Prince Sting kissed his forehead, wrapped him up in the blankets, and lay down with him. He waited until the hourglass was empty and the person sleeping in his arms turned back into a fish, and then got up and put his fish into the tank. He hadn't been able to bring the crystal fish tank, but the bed of silver rocks and the gold-embroidered blanket was here. Prince Sting put the fish on the rocks and wrapped him up in the blanket. The fish remained comfortably in dreamland. In his sleep, he reached out with his tail and wrapped it lovingly around Prince Sting's finger. Chapter 79. Fishy Probing the Secret. Li Yu slept for an entire day. It was the most peaceful sleep he'd gotten since he transmigrated. When he woke up, he thought he was still dreaming. Luckily, the note and food that Prince Ting had placed next to the tank reminded him that he already knew and accepted his identity. He'd even gotten him plenty of local snacks. Li Yu happily turned into a human to eat them. When he wasn't worried about anything, he had a big appetite. Prince Ting was in the next room working. When he heard the fish moving around next door, his lips twitched and he ordered Wang Xi to summon the physician. He had brought along a few skilled physicians from the capital all the way to the western border just in case. After Li Yu was done eating, he was asked to come out so the physician could check his pulse. Li Yu was confused. He ate and slept well, so why did he need to see a physician? But Prince Ting's presence reassured him, and he walked over obediently. He sat down next to Prince Ting and extended an arm toward the physician. The physician kept their surprise to themselves. They were all curious what kind of background this Li Gongzi had, and were worried they'd say something to offend him. But looking at the two of them together, they were sure they couldn't go wrong with treating him like Prince Ting's family. After checking him over, the physicians declared that Li Gongzi was fine. Prince Ting had even ordered Wang Xi to ask if Li Yu had suffered any shock. Li Yu had indeed been scared in the beginning, but after his biggest worry was resolved, he had slept extremely peaceful, without a single bad dream. But seeing how concerned his boyfriend was for him made Li Yu smile. He was just about to tell Prince Ting not to worry when the prince reached for his hand under his sleeve and rubbed it slightly. Li Yu recognized this as a signal from Prince Ting. Li Gongzi, after sleeping well and eating heartily, paused for a second. He lied. I can't really fall asleep, and I have a hard time eating. The physicians discussed this amongst themselves for a while, deciding Li Gongzi might have really suffered a fright. After all, shock wasn't an illness one could easily see. The physicians all asked Li Gongzi to rest easy for a while. Prince Ting gave Wang Xi a look, and Wang Xi immediately understood. Since Li Gongzi was suffering from shock, they should probably tell the Imperial Guards, as well as mention it in the note they were sending back to the palace. And of course, there was no need to mention Li Gongzi directly. Li Gongzi was deeply precious to His Highness. If Li Gongzi suffered a shock, didn't that mean His Highness had also suffered a shock? Courtesy of Wang Xi's secret signals, the news successfully reached the capital. Prince Ting had encountered a huge group of assassins as soon as he arrived at Luofeng village, suffering a huge shock, and was now unable to get up from bed. When he received the news, the emperor was beside himself with worry. He sent a number of reinforcements to the western border and ordered the Imperial Guard stationed there to thoroughly investigate the backgrounds of the assassins. He wanted to test Prince Ting, not kill him. Prince Ting was his only D-son, and as soon as he'd arrived at the border, he was attacked. It was hard not to be suspicious. The emperor also ordered the guards to investigate any recent letters going from the capital to the western border. He suspected this incident had something to do with the fight for the throne. It was so quiet in Qianting Palace that one could hear a pin drop. The emperor's gaze landed on a list of the prince's names. The second prince was in no mental state to assassinate anybody. Who could have done this to Prince Ting? Your Highness, you must be careful of the sixth prince. Using the excuse of his newly revealed carp spirit identity, Li Yu once again started lecturing. He couldn't not. They had already been attacked by assassins. Prince Ting never went to the western border in the original story, so Li Yu had no way of knowing who had sent the assassins. But, as the final boss, the sixth prince was the most suspicious. Li Yu was afraid of Prince Ting underestimating him. Prince Ting could finally ask, why? They were all princes, but Xiao Yu rarely mentioned the second or third princes. The idea of the sixth prince presenting a major obstacle seemed rather far-fetched. Li Yu had already thought of an excuse. His identity as a carp spirit was indeed useful. He cleverly spun his transmigrator's golden finger into the ability to foresee things due to his cultivation. I am able to see into the future a little bit, so I know the sixth prince will become your highness's greatest enemy. Your highness has suffered at his hands many times already. Prince Ting thought to himself, perhaps not just in the future. When the sixth prince had tried to one-up him at the emperor's birthday, he had realized the sixth prince was quite ambitious. Now that he wasn't in the capital anymore, the sixth prince should gain the emperor's attention and favor, at least on the surface. His future life seemed set. But if anything happened at the western border, the sixth prince would be the first on the list of the emperor's suspects. Besides, Prince Ting wasn't inclined to let the sixth prince get too comfortable. The sixth prince had tried to hurt him through Xiao Yu multiple times. Prince Ting would never let this go. He hadn't even gotten back at him for the emperor's birthday yet. Seeing Prince Ting getting serious, Li Yu smiled. "But don't worry, Your Highness," he said. "There's no way he'll win against you. I'm just bringing it up because I don't want you to suffer through any unnecessary hardship." Prince Ting nodded. So, the sixth prince was nothing but a paper tiger. Prince Ting asked, "What sort of technique is your foresight? Is it the same as the time with Ye Qinghuan?" "It was a prediction last time with Ye Shizhe as well," said Li Yu. "This technique, it's called the golden finger." Prince Ting thought for a moment. "Did your golden finger predict you and me?" Li Yu shook his head hurriedly. "No, the golden finger isn't always accurate. It's just a possibility." The plot had long since gone awry. In a roundabout way, Li Yu told Prince Ting everything the sixth prince had done in the book, but he did not mention Prince Ting ascending to the throne, because that might affect Prince Ting's evaluation of the situation. Though the ending wouldn't change, what if it made the process too tragic? The best course of action was what they were doing already, taking things slowly and cautiously. Prince Ting then asked, "Can I learn this technique?" Li Yu was exasperated. Why didn't Prince Ting care more about the sixth prince? Why was he only asking about cultivation? "Hey, wake up! You are the male protagonist of this palace drama, you know." Why couldn't they move past Prince Ting's interest in cultivation? Li Yu suppressed his urge to shout and did his best to persuade him. "Your Highness is of the royal family. Cultivation is not for you. Please consider and stop thinking about this." Prince Ting looked down, expression growing sad. "After your tribulation is over, how long will you stay?" Li Yu squeaked, then remembered that the tribulation was his excuse for showing up in Prince Ting's life in the first place. The prince was asking Li Yu how long he would stay in this ancient world. The fish scamming system had never mentioned this before, and Li Yu hadn't thought about it either. At first, he just wanted to get back as quickly as possible. Now that he had attachments in this time period, Li Yu thought if he could choose, he would want to stay with Prince Ting for a long time. At the end of the book, Prince Ting was still healthy at 40 years old. That was still a long way away from now. To Li Yu, who was only 18, it seemed like a lifetime. But he hadn't transmigrated of his own accord. Would it be up to him how long he stayed? Li Yu thought about it carefully for a while, then said honestly, "I'm not sure." He found he didn't want to lie to Prince Ting about this. When he heard his response, Prince Ting's expression turned furious, and he grabbed Li Yu's hand tightly in his, so tightly it hurt a little. "Your Highness, what's wrong?" Li Yu asked, surprised. He didn't know why Prince Ting was suddenly so emotional. Prince Ting pulled him roughly into his arms and repeated silently over and over, "Don't leave me." "Your Highness?" Li Yu didn't understand what was going on. He tried to wrap his arms around the other man's shoulders to calm him. The two of them fell into silence while in each other's arms. After a while, Wang Xi came to get Prince Ting, saying the assassins had confessed, so Prince Ting had to deal with them. This wasn't something he could put off, so Prince Ting let go of Li Yu, looking much calmer. He glanced at Wang Xi. "Take care of him." Wang Xi nodded enthusiastically. There was one good thing about the assassins. They made Li Gongzi and Prince Ting more affectionate with each other. Soon after, Li Yu managed to get Wang Xi to leave and immediately headed into the mental world of the system. He recalled that the quest through thick and thin had been completed when the assassin showed up, but his cover was blown. He hadn't been able to check until now, but he could claim his reward now, right? Li Yu entered the system, immediately checking the main quest line. As expected, Through Thick and Thin was now completed. The reward was another one of Prince Ting's secrets. Liu let his mind wander as he looked at the 4 options, then suddenly asked the system, "System, can I go back and look at the secrets I've viewed before?" That secret with the tiger doll, the one that had to do with Changchuan Palace, kept popping into his mind. He'd never work it out, so he couldn't let it go. The system was silent for a while, as though it was thinking it over. Just as Liu thought there was no hope, one of the 4 choices became a dark palace. Changchuan Palace! Yes! The user is allowed to swap his reward, the system said. Please choose. Liu understood that the system meant he had to pick from the 3 secrets he didn't know yet, or Changchun Palace. There was no hurry, he decided. He could check out Prince Sing's other secrets as he completed future quests. He wanted to figure this one out first. Liu chose Changchun Palace and immediately arrived at the location of the secret, a room in Changchun Palace. This time he was ready, and he observed everything very carefully. The woman's appearance, as well as the melody she hummed quietly as she waited for the servant. He also noticed that there was a bunch of cloth on the bed behind the woman. Liu hadn't really noticed last time, but this time he took a closer look. It looked a bit like swaddling clothes. When the woman and the servant began to struggle, he noticed that the swaddling moved slightly, and a pair of dark, grape-like eyes peered out, observing everything curiously. So, there was a baby in the room. At first, the baby had been hidden behind the woman, and then the conflict started between the woman and the servant, so the first time, Liu's focus had been on the fight. He hadn't noticed the baby, but the child had always been there. Wait. This child made Liu suddenly come to a realization. Why was this Prince Sting's secret? When he'd asked Prince Sting about it, he hadn't seemed to remember it at all, and since this was Prince Sting's secret, why was there no sign of Prince Sting himself? Actually, Prince Sting was here. He just hadn't noticed before, because Prince Sting was this baby. No wonder he had no memories of this, but these memories existed. Liu had seen Prince Sting as a chubby little boy. Faced with the baby version of the chubby boy, he was able to recognize him quickly. Now that he had confirmed his suspicions, he already had more questions. Since Prince Sting was a baby, and Liu hadn't spotted any cloth hangings used for mourning inside Changchuan Palace, that meant that in the memory, Empress Xiaohui was still alive. Why would Empress Xiaohui allow a woman to be with the little prince alone? Judging by the woman's age, she wasn't a normal servant. Liu noticed that the woman was a bit on the plumper side, and suddenly paused. Was this Prince Sting's wet nurse? Age, body type, and being alone with the little prince, it all added up. So, was the secret that when Prince Sting was a baby, he had unknowingly witnessed his wet nurse being murdered by a servant? But there were plenty of people that Prince Sting had dealt with. Why was this a secret? He'd had a small breakthrough, but was now stuck in another bottleneck. When he emerged from the flashback, the system reminded him, "User, the revitalizing quest line has been updated. Please confirm the information before proceeding with the next step." Liu made a noise in response. His thoughts were interrupted again. Might as well continue with the quests. A notification immediately popped up in the system. "User, please confirm your relationship with the Tyrant." The fish scamming system was asking him to confirm, but it was actually just another multiple choice, pet fish or lover. He had leveled up from pet fish now. Liu naturally chose lover, unable to keep the smile off his face. The system said, "User, please complete the next quest according to what you have selected, as Prince Sting's lover." The system updated the next step of the revitalizing quest, burn with passion with the Tyrant. Seriously? System, come out here. I promise I won't beat you to death. They had to be willing to give up their lives for each other to complete the Through Thick and Thin quest. What was required for burn with passion? It could be a problem if one's feelings developed too deeply, too quickly. Liu gave a lewd smile. Didn't this mean the system wanted them to hook up too? Was spring here? He'd eaten and drunk his fill, and now, more and more, he was craving the other man's body. Chapter 80. Fishy Masterpiece. This was the task Li Yu was most excited for. After everything had been taken care of, he secretly started to plan. The room had to be neat and clean. He even ceremoniously switched to a set of bright red bedding. He placed a pair of jade pillows on the bed and stuffed a few boxes of different kinds of ointment behind one of the pillows, a friendly suggestion from Wang Gonggong. Li Yu didn't know what would be the most useful, so he just made sure to have one of each kind. All that was left was to use his silver hourglass, time his transformation, and wrap himself in the blankets to wait excitedly. He figured he was being obvious enough. If his boyfriend still didn't get it, he was dumb as a block of wood. Li Yu asked Wang Xi to help pass along the word, requesting that Prince Xing come back early. Although they were now at the western border, it didn't feel any different from Prince Xing's manner. He always felt safe and secure wherever Prince Xing was. Li Yu waited and waited, until eventually he fell asleep. When he woke up again, the hourglass was almost halfway finished, but there was still no sign of Prince Xing. He rubbed his eyes and sat up. Why wasn't Prince Xing back yet? Had he gotten caught up in something? Li Yu recalled that the prince was probably dealing with the assassins. Of course, he couldn't take him along, Li Yu himself being very willing to avoid such situations. Prince Xing was, after all, a prince from ancient times. He had his own means of dealing with things. In the future, he would have to fight for the throne. Li Yu couldn't force him to see things from a modern perspective. As long as he didn't carelessly harm innocents, Li Yu could understand. Li Yu waited a little longer, his concern for the prince sweeping the filth out of his mind. He decided to go look for Prince Xing himself. He was just about to get dressed when he spotted the faint light coming from the window next door. A light bulb went off in his head. He knew where Prince Xing probably was. Wrapped in the blanket, Li Yu pushed open the door to the next room. Sitting at the table with a bunch of secret reports spread out in front of him, the tall youth had his brows furrowed, deep in thought. In that instant, Li Yu desperately wanted to chase away all his worries. "Your Highness, you're still busy?" Li Yu called out in a soft voice. Prince Xing looked up, spotting Li Yu standing in the doorway, wrapped up in a red blanket. He looked very cute with the way he was shaking his head, and Prince Xing couldn't help the upward quirk of his lips. He waved Li Yu over. Eagerly, Li Yu approached and sat down next to him. There were so many maps laid out on the table. Li Yu had accompanied Prince Xing to his job at the Ministry of Works, and he immediately recognized them as topographic maps. Clearly, the prince was studying the terrain. As soon as he sat down, Prince Xing swept him into his arms, blanket and all. When he touched Li Yu's head that stuck out of the blanket, his palm was a little cold. Prince Xing gave him a slightly accusatory side-eye and warmed Li Yu's hand in his. Li Yu felt warm and comfortable. "Your Highness, what are you looking at?" he asked quietly, pointing at one of the maps. They had just arrived at Luofeng village. Was Prince Xing planning on building another house? Prince Xing grabbed a brush, circled an area on the map, and wrote, "One man can hold out against 10,000. "You're preparing for battle, Your Highness?" Li Yu asked curiously. The border lay just outside Luofeng village. The constant risk of battle left the area in chaos. Li Yu had known coming here that it was very possible that a battle would break out. But wasn't it rash to start one as soon as they arrived? Why were they fighting? Prince Xing understood his worry. He handed a secret report to him. Li Yu asked hesitantly, "Can I?" Prince Xing nodded, and Li Yu opened the report. It turned out to be the assassins' confessions. The assassins had admitted they were under the orders of a local gentleman by the name of Wu, who had paid a hefty sum for this assassination attempt. It was a little shocking to read. Li Yu had assumed the assassins had been sent by the Sixth Prince, but it was a random member of the gentry instead? Li Yu was confused. This Squire Wu had never met Prince Xing, and men like him might not have much influence outside their jurisdiction, but they were all rich. Why did he try to kill Prince Xing? Seeing Li Yu's confusion, Prince Ting slowly handed Li Yu the other reports. Prince Ting found it just as suspicious as Li Yu did that such a minor noble would dare hire assassins, so he'd ordered the guards to investigate the man's background. In just one short day, the guards had already completed the background check. It was no secret in Luofeng village. The reason Squire Wu was able to wield such power and accumulate such a fortune in a remote, impoverished village was that he was secretly colluding with the bandits that the western border was overrun with. Prince Ting had done his research before setting off. So far, 2 great threats existed on the western border. The bandits were one of them, and they had the emperor constantly on edge. The border was rife with war, and so bandits often took the opportunity to harass people, going against the imperial government. The emperor had sent troops to deal with the issue before, but with little success. The bandits colluded with enemy countries, and they had the terrain advantage, so the army had never been successful in wiping them out. As a result, the bandit issue was a sore spot for the emperor. Amidst all this, Luofeng village was at a choke point at the western border. The emperor had tried to appoint several officials there, but none lasted more than half a year before they invariably either quit or died, and the village head had run out of candidates. Currently, an interim official was taking over temporarily. The emperor had sent Prince Ting for 2 reasons. First, to give the prince a chance to test his skills, and second, because he had made up his mind to solve the situation at the western border. Before Prince Ting had left the palace, the emperor had given him a secret decree that he was to look at only when he arrived at the border. Now that he was here, he took it out to read it. The emperor had ordered him to strike when the opportunity was right, and to bring the western border under control. With this decree, Prince Ting was free to do as he saw fit. He first ordered the guards to arrest Squire Wu. When he was brought before Prince Ting, he denied everything and refused to admit guilt. He behaved arrogantly, so Prince Ting skipped the pleasantries and had him beaten half to death. When the guards searched and seized Squire Wu's property, aside from money and gold, they found countless rare treasures and plenty of weapons. It turned out he wasn't a gentleman at all. He was just a bandit playing pretend, lurking within Luofeng village. He had been planted there by the bandits to help them transport things in and out. When Prince Ting arrived, the bandits didn't take the mute prince from the capital seriously. They saw him as just another official, no different from all the ones they had bullied before. The bandit chief decided to prepare a special welcome for him and had Squire Wu send the assassins. Since Prince Ting had discovered Squire Wu's true identity, he wanted to bring him to justice and crack down on the bandits immediately. But that would anger the bandits, who'd been running rampant for such a long time. Prince Ting had considered dealing with them, but the people he had initially brought with him were just a handful of elites. They were highly skilled, but there weren't many of them. Now that the Imperial Guards had arrived, he had a greater chance at success, and he could finally attempt the fight. Although Prince Ting had read many military books, it was still his first time actually going to battle. After selecting the optimal position to face the bandits, he still had to think of a comprehensive strategy. Unfortunately, the bandits had strong soldiers and horses. It was difficult to come up with a plan. All these secret reports were making Li Yu go cross-eyed. He felt renewed admiration for his boyfriend. The fish's brain was full to the brim with filth. His boyfriend was preoccupied with sticking it to the bandits instead of sticking it to him. This is what was called putting the interests of the whole before the individual. It seemed that if the bandits weren't dealt with, there'd be no action for the fish to look forward to. Is your highness worried about strategy? I have an idea. Li Yu stroked his chin, giving Prince Ting a very meaningful smile. He had seen the Emperor and the Duke of Changle stroke their chins like this, and he wanted to try it too. But their chins had majestic-looking beards, while Li Yu's was still the smooth, hairless chin of a young man. If he kept rubbing, it would look extremely out of place. Prince Ting held in his laugh. His gaze was expectant, as though asking, "What idea?" Prince Ting's dark, reflective eyes were undoubtedly his most beautiful feature. When he looked at others, they were cold as frost. But when he looked at Li Yu, they were full of emotion. With this pair of shining, sparkly eyes on him, Li Yu could feel his heart beating hard in his chest. He felt like ever since he'd admitted to being a carp spirit, Prince Sing's trust in him had only grown. He snapped himself out of it, trying his best to keep his thoughts out of the gutter. "Look, Your Highness," he said, pointing at the map. "Many families in Luofeng village have cellars in their homes. These can be expanded. Once we really start fighting, we can prepare some food and water and have the people stay in the cellars. They'll be safe, and it will prevent the bandits from attacking fleeing villagers." Li Yu didn't want any harm to come to the villagers, so he'd thought of using the cellars as something like air raid shelters. Prince Sing nodded in agreement. Not bad. Once the villagers are all hidden, you won't have anything to worry about. You can lure the bandits into the village. Then they'll be out in the open and will be hidden. If Your Highness can dig some underground tunnels as well, you'll be able to attack from those too. Li Yu batted his eyes mysteriously and drew a few traps on the map. The fish hadn't ever read books on war before, but he knew about mine and tunnel warfare. Prince Sing gave careful consideration to Li Yu's words and gained quite a lot of inspiration. He was about to ask for more when he realized Li Gongzi had turned back into a fish. He was currently waving his tail, flap, flap, flap. He scooped up the fish and the blanket with practiced ease, put the fish in the tank, and put the blanket back on the bed. After all this, Prince Sing suddenly noticed the pair of jade pillows on the bed. This must be Xiao Yu's masterpiece. Prince Sing chuckled, putting the bright red blanket away. A little box was peeking out from the jade pillow. Reaching out to grab it, he discovered a few more. Prince Sing opened one and found a milky smooth ointment inside. He finally realized exactly what he had just missed out on. After he was captured, Squire Wu remained calm at first, assuming Prince Sing would use him to negotiate with the bandits. But once Prince Sing found out his true identity, he didn't bother keeping him alive. Instead, he had him hanged from a large tree at the entrance of the village and confiscated all his illegal wealth. If the bandits were going to try to scare Prince Sing, then Prince Sing would slap them right back. The village head was very worried about this. Prince Sing was a prince from the faraway capital. The village head wasn't hoping for much, but a son of the emperor definitely couldn't be allowed to be hurt in any way while visiting his village. When he found out there had been an attempt on Prince Sing's life, the village head nearly fainted. But Prince Sing had ordered the bandit to be hanged in retaliation. The village head laughed helplessly. Never mind being hurt. Now it would be a miracle if Prince Sing wasn't murdered. Killing Squire Wu was as good as declaring war on the bandits. The army had tried many times before and had never been successful. How many people did Prince Sing have? How did he think he was going to defeat the bandits so soon after arriving at Luofeng village? His Royal Highness Prince Sing would be fine after initiating the chaos. He could just leave and wash his hands of Luofeng village. But what about its people? Suddenly, everyone in the village was in a panic. The village head asked to see Prince Sing many times, but Prince Sing never agreed. Eventually, one night, the furious bandits launched their attack. But when they invaded the village, they discovered it was empty. The next thing they knew, their opponents seemed to appear out of nowhere and had them completely confounded. Realizing something was wrong, they tried to escape, but were brought up short by traps set at the village exit. This was the first time the bandits had been defeated so effectively. They had been caught by Prince Sing, who had been waiting patiently for his prey. Chapter 81. Fishy burning with passion. Li Yu was walking along the small streets of Luofeng village, accompanied by Wang Xi and a couple of guards. After the battle with the bandits, the villagers should have been exhausted, but all the people he saw along the way were full of energy and excitedly discussing what had happened. Gongzi, this was the result of a victorious battle from His Highness. Wang Xi praised his master enthusiastically. He's given them so much confidence. This had been Prince Sing's first battle against the bandits, and it was also Luofeng village's first victory against them in all these years. The villagers had received a huge burst of encouragement. The bandits weren't as invincible as they had imagined. And they now knew that the emperor, who might as well have been on the other side of the world, hadn't given up on them. They were especially heartened by Prince Sting leading the battle against the bandits himself. Several villagers had witnessed Prince Sting's tactics in person and were vividly reenacting them for everyone else. When the bandits had been tricked into the village, the guards following the prince kept appearing silently where the bandits least expected it, striking them where it hurt. Prince Sting, though only a single person, seemed to be possessed by the god of war himself, slaying 3 bandits all on his own. As a result, Prince Sting had gained the reputation of a skilled warrior. Before Prince Sting had arrived at the border, the villagers had heard this prince was a mute with a brutal personality, so they didn't have a very good impression of him. Later, when Prince Sting hanged Squire Wu in front of an audience, the villagers were somewhat gratified, but not so gratified that they weren't terrified of the inevitable consequences. They'd all hoped that this prince would hurry up and leave, but it turned out this prince was hiding his true plans extremely well. He had managed to defeat the bandits that had been plaguing them for so many years. All the villagers now saw Prince Sting in a new light. Right now, they saw Prince Sting as their guardian angel. As long as Prince Sting was there, Luofeng village was safe. The person whose opinion had changed the most was the village head. Before Prince Sting fought the bandits, he was filled with worry. Now that the battle was over, the village head wanted to spend all day gushing about Prince Sting. He thought Prince Sting was much better than the useless officials they'd been assigned in the past. Hearing the villagers praise Prince Sting made Li Yu happier than if they'd been praising him. Although he had given Prince Sting some ideas by mentioning the underground passageways and traps, he didn't understand war. He had only talked about those concepts briefly, and Prince Sting immediately understood what to do with him. Their luck was also pretty good. Luofeng village just so happened to already have a few very short passageways in place, which the villagers had originally dug out because they were afraid of bandits making their way into the village. Prince Sting took advantage of them and had ordered the guards to create more overnight. He had also planted many traps where the bandits were sure to pass by, leaving them to suffer miserably. Prince Sting had fought in the battle himself too, boosting the morale of the soldiers. With Prince Sting in the lead, they responded flexibly to the battle. Prince Sting's contribution to the victory was undeniable, and Li Yu felt very lucky to witness an ancient version of mine and tunnel warfare. Before he left for the battle, Prince Sting told Li Yu he had to hide with the villagers and he would have someone stand guard over him, but Li Yu refused. He wanted to watch the battle from somewhere hidden. Prince Sting acquiesced. The entire time, Li Yu's eyes were locked onto the mute prince. He fought so bravely, it seemed he was invincible. Li Yu was no longer so afraid of such bloody scenes. At least, not in the way he had once been. Every moment, he was gripped by the fear of losing Prince Sting. But he knew Prince Sting had to participate in this battle in order to establish himself. This was his first official step on his journey to the throne. Although he didn't hold the same deep hatred in his heart that drove him in the original book, some people were just born with certain qualities. And Prince Sting possessed the invincibility of someone destined for the throne. "Gongzi, please hold on a minute." An old woman holding a child called out to Li Yu. "Are you with His Highness?" Many bandits had been captured after the battle, and all the villagers had been checked by the village head. None of them were suspicious, and Li Yu had the guards and Wang Xi with him, so he stopped without hesitation. "Grandma, I'm Prince Sting's attendant. Is there anything you need?" Li Yu asked in a gentle voice. After confirming she'd found the right person, the old woman shakily pulled out a flower crown from her sleeve. She handed it to him and said, "Please pass this on to Prince Sting for me. I made this flower crown myself. Please thank him for saving my grandson and me." Li Yu didn't know how to react. "What?" The old woman explained that most of the villagers had been moved to a safe place during the battle, but her grandson was mischievous and disappeared somewhere. The old woman had missed her opportunity to be transferred to the safe area because she was trying to find him and hadn't known where to go. She was left sobbing on the side of the road, which was how Prince Sting had found her. "He ordered the guards to help me find my grandson and took us somewhere safe. That's how we remained unharmed." She knew that if it had been anyone else, they might not have cared about an elderly person like her, especially one with a child. She was extremely grateful and wanted to thank Prince Ting. Liu didn't really know the tyrant could do good deeds such as this. Was the tyrant turning into a benevolent ruler due to the wing flaps of the little butterfly that was him? He smiled. Grandma, don't worry. I'll definitely pass it along. The old woman thanked him profusely, and Liu asked Wang Xi to hand a red envelope to her grandson. Liu puffed up his chest proudly. His heart felt sweeter than honey. After seeing all he wanted on his stroll, Liu returned to the residence with the old woman's flower crown. Prince Ting was in the middle of taking off his armor. Liu's eyes lit up as he rushed up to him. Your Highness, hold on. I want to touch it. It wasn't clear exactly what Prince Ting was thinking of, because his face suddenly went slightly red and he lowered his hands. Liu carefully smoothed the hand over his shining armor. He knew Prince Ting had already wiped it down to minimize the amount of blood Liu would have to see. Sometimes Liu thought he was being unreasonable. When you liked someone, shouldn't you accept every part of them? Like how Prince Ting couldn't speak, how Liu was able to transform into a fish, and the blood that once stained this armor. All of that was part of them. Not bringing up the topic was a way to show that he cared, but wasn't acceptance also a way to show it? Your Highness, in the future, I will do my best to get used to it, Liu said gently, helping him remove his armor. It will be okay. At first, Prince Ting didn't know what he was talking about. Halfway through taking off his armor, he suddenly understood and wrapped Liu in his arms, kissing him aggressively. The armor was too hard and it hurt Liu a little, but he still hugged the prince back tightly. After removing the armor, Liu wanted to help him change into a set of casual robes. Prince Ting often helped him change, so Liu didn't think it was a big deal to help the prince now and then. But as soon as he moved to do so, Prince Ting shook his head. Huh? I'm already helping you change. Is there something you're not happy with? Prince Ting wasn't unhappy. He pulled out a red robe edged in gold and handed it to Liu with a smile. It wasn't that Prince Ting didn't want Xiaoyu to help him. It was that the casual clothes weren't quite suitable. Liu was bewildered, but he helped the prince change. This was probably Prince Ting's most eye-catching robe. It was red patterned with gold, and the jade belt was encrusted with pearls. If he tied a red ribbon in his hair, he'd look like he was getting married. Liu was just thinking it was an amusing coincidence when Prince Ting really did pull out a red ribbon and a jade comb, handing both to him. Liu kind of understood. I'm really bad at tying hair, he chuckled. Are you sure you don't mind? Prince Ting nodded and nodded. Liu used all the skill he had and tied Prince Ting's hair up in a way that was almost competent. Having taken care of his boyfriend, Liu said excitedly, I want to change too. There was a new set of robes Prince Ting had made for him in his inventory. Prince Ting thought, on principle, no matter where they were, his wife had to have enough clothes. Before leaving the capital, he had made a rush order for Liu. Added to the clothes Liu had from before, he could wear a different set each day and never have to repeat an outfit. Liu liked the one he pulled out now the best. For once, Prince Ting hadn't had a lot of gems added to this one. Instead, it was made of heavy, bright red silk, embroidered with fish playing amongst peonies. The peonies, woven with gold thread, were many-layered, blooming from the hem of the robe all the way to the waist. A lifelike carp wrapped around the waist, as if smelling the peonies. The embroidery on this robe was exceptional. Each flower petal seemed delicate and charming. The fish was silver with flecks of gold, and its scales shone. Liu already had a set of silver robes quite similar to the color of his fish form. This embroidery was even closer, as though it had perfectly captured him as a fish. Even the size was accurate. Liu fell in love immediately. Since Prince Ting was wearing red robes, Liu wanted to wear red too. They had worn matching outfits at Yeshutsu's wedding as well. After he was finished changing, Prince Ting put his hair up for him too and tied a sash around his waist that was embroidered with a pair of fish. Now dressed, the two looked at one another, each stunned by the other's appearance. Now what? Li Yu couldn't help but stutter. Prince Ting smiled and reached into his sleeve. Li Yu was screaming in his heart. Here it comes! Here it comes! This man's about to do something again! What was it going to be this time? A nauseating note or a little golden fish? It was neither. Prince Ting pulled out a rock and placed it on Li Yu's palm. Li Yu looked at it. This rock was shaped like a fish, and it was very familiar. It was the fish-shaped rock he'd put next to Prince Ting's jade figure in the huge fish pond in Prince Ting's manor. He remembered that after the fit he'd thrown while he was sick, both the rock and the figure had gone missing. He assumed they'd been swept to some random corner in the pond and thought it was a shame. But after Li Yu got a boyfriend, he didn't pay it too much attention. Had it really been with Prince Ting all this time? Your Highness, how did you find it? Li Yu played with the rock, pleasantly surprised. He hadn't played with it in his human form before. But Prince Ting just wanted to give him this rock. He didn't want to explain how he'd found it. It'd take forever. Li Yu rubbed the carvings on the stone, then suddenly looked up at Prince Ting with bright eyes. Then did your Highness have a jade figure as well? Jade figure? Very quickly, Prince Ting realized what he was talking about. He had wanted to keep it to himself originally, but since Li Yu wanted it, he took it out as well and placed it in Li Yu's hand. Li Yu held the jade figure in one hand, the fish-shaped rock in the other, and placed them both together. His eyes were curved from smiling. Prince Ting watched on silently as the fish played. After Li Yu put them away, Prince Ting pulled out a jar of wine from a sealed box. Through the lid, Li Yu could already smell the fragrance of green plum wine. He didn't know Prince Ting had brought such a thing from the capital, and he burst out laughing. Your Highness, did you bring the entire manor with you? Prince Ting shook his head and opened the jar with a silver blade. This was a previously unopened jar of wine. The moment it was open, a strong fragrance spread through the room, making Li Yu's mouth water. Prince Ting, who normally didn't let him touch alcohol, suddenly changed his ways and fetched 2 jade cups. The cups were special too. There was a fish etched on to each one on the left and one on the right. When they were put together, they were a perfect pair. Prince Ting filled the 2 cups and handed one to Li Yu. Li Yu was just about to bring it to his lips when he snuck a glance at Prince Ting. Prince Ting was also holding the cup, but he wasn't moving. Oh, sorry. It's just I know what's happening. Okay, he just had his arm extended. Li Yu immediately realized what he wanted. He reached his arm over as well. The two intertwined their arms and drank the wine together. This wine has such a nice smell. Li Yu thought it tasted even better than the first time he tried it. Prince Ting smiled, deciding that he would tell the fish later. He'd grabbed it from the old Duke of Chang'an before they left the capital. It was their wedding wine. Now that they'd changed and drunk the wine, there was still... He'd almost forgotten the old lady's flower crown. Li Yu handed it to Prince Ting and gave a simple account of the old woman's story. Did your Highness really do that? Although he was sure it was true, Li Yu was still shocked. After all, Prince Ting had never done anything like that, aside from saving the fish. Prince Ting nodded a little awkwardly. It was true, but there was a slight misunderstanding. Prince Ting didn't care how the people on the western border viewed him. He hadn't saved the old woman because he pitied her. He was used to being alone ever since he was young and rarely cared for others. His heart was still cold even now. But Xiao Yu cared about the villagers and didn't want them to come to harm. He just wanted to grant Xiao Yu's wish. Prince Ting didn't want to explain. He smiled and placed the flower crown on Li Yu's head. Xiao Yu should be the one receiving this reward. With the flower crown on his head, Li Yu suddenly felt playful. He smiled as he picked at the red bloom from the flower crown and placed it against Prince Ting's chest. Wearing red, drinking wine, and wearing a flower. He was a real groom now. Li Yu couldn't help but think of the burn with passion quest, and his mouth suddenly went dry. Your Highness, are you tired? He asked, face red. Prince Ting was afraid of missing this fish again. He had enough energy to fight the bandits 10 times over. He shook his head fiercely. Huh? You're not tired? Then let's talk some more? Prince Ting thought they were getting further and further away from the main event. Opportunities were hard to come by. Prince Ting grabbed Li Yu's hand and pulled him in. When their lips approached, they were saturated with the wine's fragrance, gentle and romantic. Li Yu lost himself in the kiss, and Prince Ting scooped him up into his arms. Seeming to sense that something was coming, Li Yu couldn't help but fidget restlessly. Prince Ting brought him to the bed that was covered in red, the very bed Li Yu had prepared secretly before. Li Yu's gaze swept across the bed, both shy and pleased. Prince Ting patiently unfastened the bun he himself had helped Li Yu put up. On this night, where he was destined to lose something, Li Yu thought he should say something sweet to initiate it. He'd thought about this scene thousands of times. It should be playful, yet lure Prince Ting in so that he couldn't resist. Something Prince Ting would never be able to forget. Remembering Prince Ting's whole deal about absorbing essence, Li Yu found his inspiration, imitating the characters in the novels. He teased, Husband, we Yao need to absorb essence. Before he could finish speaking, something blocked his view and he was pushed down. Chapter 82, Fishy Aftermath. Li Yu had been a fish for a long time. It was a terrible feeling to be away from water for too long, but he enjoyed his current state of breathlessness. He cried and screamed, leaving mark after mark behind on the other man's shoulders. Prince Ting's overwhelming love shone through the pain of metamorphosis, and very quickly he was lost within it. The system's notifications went off inside his head, one after another, almost like explosions. Obviously, the burn with passion quest was complete, but Li Yu was practically an inferno by now and had no attention to spare for the system. Not that he needed to pay attention. All he had to do was collect his reward and figure out the next step. He'd take care of that when he had time. Li Yu screamed internally for the system to shut up and that he accepted everything. And the stupid thing finally quieted down. Now he could focus his attention on the sport of love. But the hourglass was almost up. Prince Ting stopped and kissed his bright red face, and though he looked at him with restraint in his eyes, his meaning was clear. Is it time to leave? Li Yu thought he was like Cinderella in the fairy tales, sitting in his pumpkin carriage. As soon as the clock struck 12, he would have to leave. But his Prince Ting, knew that he would turn into a fish. And even though he knew, he still loved him. Your Highness, I don't want to leave. Li Yu loved this man before him more and more. He smiled while hugging him, and his voice was now hoarse from overuse. Because I know Your Highness would never judge me. Li Yu giggled as he hugged Prince Ting again. Prince Ting stilled for a moment before he figured out what Li Yu meant. He felt both emotional and exasperated. The fish had thrown all caution to the wind and begun to act recklessly. He had to grit his teeth and bear with it. Prince Ting took a few deep breaths so he wouldn't be led astray by the fish. This truly was a huge test for him. As the final grains of sand were falling in the hourglass, Prince Ting laid Li Yu down and ruffled his hair. His lover's soft, sparkling eyes peered up at him, tears of pleasure still glistening in his eyelashes. Your Highness, wait for me, Li Yu said quietly. His fingers touched Prince Ting's fingertips longingly, like a small promise. Prince Ting held back all the passion he felt in his chest and waited quietly. In the next second, he watched as the youth turned back into a fish. Prince Ting had witnessed Li Yu transform many times by now, and he rushed to get the fish tank. But the fish stopped him. He jumped up to his shoulder, rubbing against his face affectionately. Then, using his hair as a slide, Li Yu slipped into his palm. Prince Ting was confused at first. The fish was too big now to be held in just one hand, so he cupped both hands, holding the fish within them. All of a sudden, his palms felt cold, and out of nowhere, they were filled with clear water. The fish was looking up at him from inside it. Liu Yu immediately understood that this was the carp spirit's magic. He conjured water. He waited, just like he had been asked, until the sound of the dagung wood block could be heard outside. When the hour was struck, it was as if the fish in his hands felt something, and he happily jumped out of Liu Yu's palms. Liu Yu flipped over, making a beautiful arc in the air, and once again returned to human form, flying into his arms. Prince Ting caught him with a smile. Liu Yu pouted, panting slightly. Your Highness, when carps absorb essence, it happens in 2 acts. Now that the first act is over, the second is about to start. His hoarse voice contained a sliver of sweet charm, and he continued to stroke the passion in his heart. You'd better be careful, Your Highness, or I might drain you dry. He wanted to drain him dry in just one night? It wouldn't be that easy. Prince Ting smiled, no longer suppressing the desire within his eyes. They'd had no choice but to extinguish the raging fire before, but now, without hesitation, they both added more and more kindling, letting the flames roar higher and higher. Liu Yu slept late into the morning. When he woke, he realized he was laying on his silver rock bed with the leaf blanket wrapped around him. It was a shame he couldn't wake up pillowed on his boyfriend's chest, but with his fishy circumstances, being able to successfully absorb essence was already a great achievement. Liu Yu was very satisfied with the whole process. He was just about to swim away from his bed when he realized his entire body felt as heavy as lead, and his fins felt like they had rusted over. Meanwhile, his tail, it hurt whenever he tried to move it. When he'd been secretly looking forward to it before, Liu Yu had known there would be some discomfort afterward. He was familiar with human discomforts, but how would that pain feel in fish form? He felt better as a fish when he was sick, but what about after doing the deed? Now he knew. It wasn't much better in his fish form. It felt like the spot beneath his tail fin had been punctured by a hard, merciless steel fork. It burned. He understood now why fish mating was called intertwining tails. He might be the first fish to survive being skewered by a steel fork. Last time, when he'd asked Prince Ting how long he could last, Prince Ting held up one finger. Liu Yu assumed he meant 10 minutes, or maybe even just 1 minute if he was unlucky. But now he realized that the asshole had probably meant an entire hour. Oh, right. And last night he'd been skewered twice, the first half and the second half. He'd suffered through the pleasure, of being skewered both times. Sob. It felt great when they were doing it, but he was suffering from the aftermath now. He couldn't just lay here, not moving forever. Liu Yu couldn't even flip over, and he was hungry. Fortunately, his boyfriend, Prince Ting, was not far. Liu Yu hadn't been hungry for long before Prince Ting was already walking over. Noticing that the fish was awake, Prince Ting felt boundless gentleness well up within his heart. He took out a piece of fish food to play with him. In the past, the fish would happily swim over and play around with him. Prince Ting liked to pet the fish, but now, despite his attempts, the fish just stared at him pitifully. After a while, he lifted his fish head, struggled for a bit, and then rolled off the silver rock bed. He continued to stare pitifully at him from the bottom of the tank. Prince Ting was shocked and rushed to pick him up. The fish was entirely limp in his hands. Last night, Prince Ting had tossed around the human Xiao Yu, but now he didn't know what to do when it came to this seemingly boneless fish. He brought the food to the fish's mouth, and the poor fish moved his mouth as quick as lightning and took the food. He could still eat, so it probably wasn't a serious issue. Prince Ting felt somewhat relieved. Before Liu Yu had turned back into a fish, he had carefully examined him and made sure he was uninjured. As for his fish form, the physicians and servants who had experience with fish had all come to take a look before the fish had woken up. The physician couldn't check the fish's pulse, while the servants' faces turned worried and ashen, hemming and hawing without being able to give a definitive answer. Prince Ting just had to figure it out for himself. He knew at least a little. If he was uncomfortable, then they needed to apply medicine. But he couldn't apply it while Xiao Yu was still a fish. If he left it until the fish turned back into a human, they'd have to wait until the next day. Prince Ting was conflicted on how to take care of an injured fish for this period of time. Liu rubbed against his finger, wanting him to relax. His recovery speed had been buffed by the system, so perhaps he'd be fine soon. It was just the metal fork. He was a strong fish. Besides, he wanted more in the future. With the help of Prince Ting, Liu ate plenty of fish food and felt a lot more comfortable. He rewarded Prince Ting with a fishy kiss, then remembered he had to go claim his rewards and entered the system. The system's notifications had come one after another last night, like fierce waves. But at the time, he was so thoroughly preoccupied by the waves of passion, he had no time to worry about it. Now he could look at his reward. He could receive another one of Prince Ting's secrets. Li Yu entered the system and was immediately greeted with an influx of notification windows. They nearly smothered him to death. What was going on? Didn't he just complete a quest? Shouldn't he be ready for the next? Why were there so many notifications? Li Yu wasn't in the mood to check them all. He checked the main quest progress first. Last night's Raging Fire had completed the Burn with Passion quest. The next step, Spread Your Seeds with the Tyrant, was in progress. Spread your seeds? Surely that wasn't quite right. Spreading seeds meant continuing the family line, which meant having children, right? Liu was shocked and a little put off, and he hurried to read the description. Perhaps he misunderstood. Perhaps he and Prince Ting simply had to plant crops? Fortunately, the quest had a description this time, though it was only one line. Give birth to the tyrant's children. Li Yu was freaked out. Holy shit! The description might as well not exist. What did it mean, give birth to the tyrant's children? He was a man. Even if he was a fish, he was a male fish. What was he supposed to give birth with? The system was asking him to go against the laws of nature. No, why did the system even have such outrageous quests? Liu was so shocked his voice shook. System, what's going on? Why do we need to have children? The system responded in a low voice. User, please check last night's notifications. Liu no longer dared to ignore them. He hurriedly opened them all up. The notifications were actually all warnings. The one on the very bottom, which meant the one that came up first, was, the Burn with Passion quest is now complete. Warning, the user is about to enter the highest level of intimacy with the tyrant. This will affect the subsequent missions. Please consider carefully. Liu thought back to when the first notification had popped up. It was when Prince Ting had pressed him into the red bedding and kissed him with mouthfuls of green plum wine. Wait, so that also counted? He didn't have to actually do it? But he wanted to. Who would stop at a time like that? Who could stop at a time like that? The second from the bottom, the next step, spread your seeds with the tyrant, has begun. User, please confirm whether or not you consent to having children. The third from the bottom, user, please confirm whether or not you consent to having children. The fourth from the bottom, user, please confirm whether or not you have consent to having children. The fifth from the bottom, user, please confirm. The long string of notifications all contained the same line. It was clear how persistent the system was, but that wasn't right. If he had to consent, it wouldn't just make him give birth casually, right? So how did it advance to the next step? What had he done? Liu suddenly recalled that last night he was frustrated by the system's constant notifications, so he had accepted everything blindly. That seemed to be when the system had quieted down too. So he'd done this to himself? Holy fucking shit! This was way too much information at once. He was the one who had done this to himself? Realizing this, Liu went to look at the second most recent notification. It now read, the next step, Spreading your seeds with the Tyrant has now been started. Please select the form you would like to complete this mission in. 1. Fish. 2. Human. Nani? The Burn with Passion quest had asked him to select a form too. What did this mean? Liu had a bad feeling. He immediately opened the most recent notification. The user has accepted the quest without making a selection. The default choice has been selected. Fish. User, please complete this quest in fish form. Liu finished reading the whole message, shaking. Complete the quest in fish form, which meant giving birth as a fish. Okay, at least he didn't have to have a swollen belly as a human. No, he couldn't have a swollen belly as a fish either. Liu was vexed, feeling like he'd gone in circles. System, how am I supposed to give birth as a male fish? User, don't worry. The Mo Pet system can change the genes of the fish. Some male fish can get pregnant. ... The system certainly had no problem defying nature. It could give him secret special genes that make a male fish pregnant? All of this was making him dizzy. In this world, the system was God, the golden finger. He couldn't go against it. Liu made a last attempt. Even if some male fish could give birth, can humans and fish breed cross species? Even if a fish can give birth, will it give birth to a fish or a human? Don't worry, user. Just complete your mission. As your reward this time, transformation time will double, and you will gain the ability to cancel your transformation. Sob. It was so over. Every time the system told him not to worry, it was definitely scamming him. What kind of bullshit quest was this? And the reward was exactly what he wanted. Couldn't he just get the reward without doing the quest? The reward can only be claimed after finishing the quest. Liu kept trying to comfort himself. The quest was already in progress, sure, but how could he get pregnant after just one time? Once is enough. The system seemed determined not to let him live and announced loudly, User, don't worry. You have the one shot and done skill. The first time will definitely be enough. What? He had always wondered what the one shot and done skill was. So this was what it meant? The world spun before Liu's eyes. System, come out here, he yelled. I promise to beat you up until you give birth. He was ejected by the system before he could even claim his rewards from the last quest. Liu had experience now, and he knew protesting was useless. Nothing could stop the fish scamming system's quests. Wait, did this mean he was already pregnant? Liu couldn't hold back his gasp. He looked down fearfully at his slightly distended stomach. Was it fish food in there or fish roe? Prince Sing had been watching over the fish this whole time and noticed that after the fish came out of meditation, it had become a little agitated. He touched the fish's back. What's wrong? Liu stared up at his handsome face. Before he thought Prince Sing was handsome no matter how he looked at him. But now, all he could think about was pregnancy. Sob, help! I just want to do it! I don't want to give birth! Well, we have officially read the first 6 chapters of Volume 3 of the Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish. And I have to, y'all already know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to try to go in order from my notes. So on page 24, it mentioned that in ancient times, they liked to burn Yao. And I did have someone comment on a previous video about wondering, like, what more there was to Yao not being accepted in history. And so if we don't get an answer within these books, which I feel like we won't because they kind of just keep brushing past it, then maybe I can look it up myself and see if I find something and then let you all know in like a wrap-up video about my thoughts on this series. I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, I'm very curious. I mean, if you already know, then you can just put it in the comments and then I won't look it up and I'll just share it if I do a recap. Anyway, the next thing I want to say is finally, I think I'm telling you, I could not go one more freaking frackin' friddling chapter with Li Yu thinking that Prince Ting did not know he was a freaking fish. So I'm happy. And I don't know about anyone else, but I hope y'all are happy too. And the other thing is, I definitely think that it was smart for Li Yu to stick to the whole carp spirit story rather than being like, hey, I died. And then, like, you're a part of this novel that I was reading, and somehow I transmigrated into it. Oh, and by the way, let me explain to you what transmigration is, because I'm sure this word didn't exist back in the day. So I think it was a smart idea for him to do that. After all, I'm kind of wondering, because I don't know about these kinds of things, but I'm kind of wondering, like, what if technically his scenario is a carp spirit scenario? Maybe not all carp spirits are like that, but what if his transmigration there into a fish is really him being a carp spirit? But, that's neither here or there. We don't know their origins. At least I don't know their origins. So now going on to the next thing. The burn with passion with the tyrant. I'm not going to lie. For the first time, there was no other thoughts of possibility of what action could be taken in my mind to fulfill this quest. So I was with Li Yu when he totally thought that one, compared to like his previous things where he just kind of made up those intimate acts himself. But yeah, as soon as I saw burn with passion with the tyrant, I was like, oh, so yeah, like, have sex. But then look, it turns out he didn't. They just had a passionate moment of kissing and stuff. So anyway, that was funny. The next thing I wanted to mention was actually something that Li Yu was doing when he was thinking up an idea for the whole battle. He started stroking his chin as if he had a beard. And I'm not going to lie, I do that sometimes too, just for the heck of it. Like, I just imagine that I have this nice long white beard and I'm a wise old man, even though I'm not. So now the next thing I want to go to is the chapter before the one that we just read. Oh my gosh, Li Yu. So especially on page 57, I mean, not page 57, but leading up to that, I do have something to say about that page. Li Yu was looking at him like, wow, he looks like a groom, basically. But I'm like, did it not cross your mind that, like, come on, my guy. I'm sorry, I can't even talk. But like, as soon as you two were like, I want to put on some clothes as well, and you put on matching red robes, my guy, you were getting married. And then he plucked the flower and put it on Prince Ting's chest and was like, look, now he really looks like a groom. It's like, not only does he look like a groom, he is a groom. You guys are getting married, and you just did the ritual with the jiao beiju, which is, when they intertwine their arms and drink the wine together. I was like, dude, are you Chinese? Because the funny thing, it said Prince Ting would tell him later. And so I'm like, so he doesn't know that they just got married, basically? Please tell me that is not the case. Otherwise, I am going to call Li Yu dumb. I will do it. Anyway, speaking of page 57, I had the hardest time recording the top where it said, since Prince Ting was wearing red robes, I can't believe I just did it successfully, but I'm telling you over and over, I was like, since Prince Ting was wearing red robes, since Prince Ting was wearing red robes. It was so funny. I had a hard time reading that line and had to record it about 5 different times. I don't do bloopers for you guys because I'm just not trying to do that. But sometimes when I'm reading, I wish you guys could hear the issues, the troubles that I go through to record these. Not that it's hard work at all, but sometimes the mouth just ain't mouthing right. So that's not related to the story. Anyway, oh my God, page 66. As soon as it said spread your seeds, I was like, babies. So at least now I know apparently he understood spread your seeds as well immediately. There was no footnote on that. So of course that's just something I guess they didn't need to put a footnote for, but yeah, babies. And then the last thing, just for anyone who doesn't know, especially if you're not an anime watcher or manga reader, I suppose, then you wouldn't know, is nani is what in Japanese. Two notes left. Okay. So normally I side with the system because the system normally doesn't scam Liu. But I have to say, this time I'm saying the system scammed him, or the system was being very unfair and unethical because, come on, they were in the moment. He was about to get it on with his boo. And you want to pop this stuff up at him knowing that he's not going to prioritize it. Come on. You knew he wasn't going to prioritize that mess. So I totally understand Liu being frustrated this time around because, I mean... the system, but never mind. And then as far as the one shot and done skill, the only thing I'll say is Liu should have asked about it when he had the opportunity, because I do definitely remember him thinking like, what is this? Nah, I'll just wait until it's time to use it to figure it out. May he learn from his mistakes and never do that again. Also, I'm with the system. I don't know how he thinks that once is like too fast. Like, do you realize in reality, once is usually all it takes? Just that one, the very first time the girl has sex, then boom, she's pregnant. Or the very first time the girl goes without protection, then boom, she's pregnant. So it was just like, I mean, my guy, you did the deed. Now you got the seed. Okay. I'm not going to say anything else. I will see you all next time. And oh yeah, please leave your comments in the comment section. I would love to hear your thoughts. I will try to respond to everyone, but even if I don't respond, I'm at least going to heart it or thumbs up something. So I hope you all enjoyed these chapters and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I mean, well, Bye-bye is not how I say bye.